Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into, well, it's less a guitar effect pedal and maybe more like a raw sonic force of nature.
Ah, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We are talking about the MXR Blue Box, the model MX103. And it's a fascinating piece of analog mayhem.
It really is. It's almost like the ultimate anti-pedal, you know? If you, the listener, are looking for something orderly or clean or maybe smooth.
Yeah, look elsewhere.
Exactly. You've picked the wrong subject today. So our mission here is basically a life history of the Blue Box. We're going to trace its chaotic mid-'70s beginning, its really unique circuit, and how it eventually came back in modern times. And we're pulling all this from the source materials you shared.
And the significance here is pretty crucial because the Blue Box, it's actually one of MXR's original Core 4 pedals.
Mm-hmm.
We all know the legends, right? The Phase 90, the distortion, plus the Dynacomp. I mean, these are staples, musical workhorses on boards everywhere.
Totally standard stuff.
But the Blue Box, it's the weird one. It's the outlier. It's become this cult favorite specifically because it resists order. People actually love it for its unpredictability.
Yeah, for the noise.
Exactly. The noise and those amazing, like, broken, almost synth-like textures it coughs up.
That's the key thing that sets it apart from, you know, its siblings, what the pedal does. Well, the idea is simple, but how it sounds is just aggressive.
Totally.
It generates a sound one full octave down.
Right. A sub-octave.
And it slams that together with this incredibly aggressive, like really dirty fuzz distortion. And you, the listener, you only get two simple knobs to try and tame this thing: volume and blend.
That's it. Volume and blend controlling absolute chaos.
Pretty much.
Okay, so let's dive right into that chaotic circuit then. That's what really defines the vintage sound. This thing came out mid-'70s, like 74 or 75-ish.
Yeah, right around then. Smack in the middle of that first big wave of, you know, standardized stomp boxes.
And what's fascinating, like you said, the circuit.
Yeah.
It was never about fidelity, was it? It was all about character.
Oh, completely. It's analog, obviously, but the key thing is it's fundamentally monophonic.
Okay, hold on. Monophonic. In the context of an analog octave pedal like this, does that just mean it only really listens for one note at a time?
Essentially, yeah. That's a good way to think about it. It's really optimized to track a single pitch. So if you try and play complex chords...
Forget about it.
Right. Or even if you just have a lot of harmonic clutter, maybe from your pickups or another pedal, the circuit just struggles. It can't easily find that fundamental frequency.
And that's where the magic happens.
That's exactly where the magic happens. Its whole sonic character, that famous kind of broken sound, it comes directly from those tracking glitches, from the aliasing artifacts that result.
So the failure is the feature.
100%. The failure to track cleanly is the sound. It's that stuttering, glitchy, almost like digital-sounding sputter. It sounds like an old Atari game glitching out or something.
Which is just such a brilliant paradox in pedal design, isn't it? You've got these incredibly simple controls, just outputter for volume and blend. That's it.
Yep.
But the sound that comes out is just ridiculously complex and unpredictable. The blend knob mixes your clean guitar signal with the pure fuzz plus octave side, right? The wet side.
Yeah, and that wet side it's dominant. It takes over pretty quickly.
And we got to emphasize that fuzz.
Yeah.
It's not optional.
Not at all. You can't switch it off. You can't really dial it back. It's just there. Super aggressive, super dirty, baked right into the circuit design. And there's no tone control, nothing to shape it or tame it.
It's pure, unfiltered fuzz and glitchy octave.
Exactly. And, you know, if you look at the basic tech specs our sources mentioned, the input impedance is about 1 megohm, pretty standard for the time.
Yeah.
And the current draw, get this, it's around 4 milliamps when it's on.
4 milliamps. Seriously, that's like nothing. My tuner probably draws more than that.
Right. It's incredibly low by today's standards.
Does that low draw just show how simple the 70s circuit was, or is it just like a side effect good for battery life?
Probably a bit of both, honestly. It definitely reflects a very efficient, simple circuit design from that era, you know, designed purely to run off a 9-volt battery.
Which makes sense because thinking about the original build,
yeah,
they only ran on batteries, right?
Exactly. Which leads nicely into the next bit. Those original units had zero concessions to modern convenience. No DC jack.
Right. Reinforces that idea that the Blue Box works best on, like, single notes or maybe simpler, slower riffs.
Definitely. The second you start playing fast or you hit a chord, that octave tracking just gives up the ghost.
And you get that beautiful broken sound everyone loves.
That's the sound. The quirks are the features. Absolutely.
Okay, so moving from the sound to the actual box itself, this is where it gets really interesting for collectors, right?
Mm.
If you're out there hunting for a vintage blue box, what are the physical clues? What signals rarity?
Yeah, this is key. Collectors are often looking for that early aesthetic, which ties right back to MXR's first manufacturing phase.
Like the logo.
Exactly. The very first units had the cursive logo, what people call the script logo.
Ah.
If you see that script logo, you immediately know you're looking at an early piece, probably from before, say, 1976. And that instantly makes it more desirable, more valuable.
And wasn't there something even earlier? Our sources mentioned something about the actual enclosures.
That's right. The super, super early ones reportedly use what collectors call BD box enclosures.
BUD box, like the brand name.
Yeah, BD Industries made these generic, lighter weight, plain aluminum boxes. MXR apparently used those right at the very beginning before they switched to their own standard heavy-duty die-cast enclosures that we all recognize now.
Wow, so that really points to a time when MXR was just starting out, still figuring things out.
Totally. They hadn't fully standardized their parts or their supply chain yet. That shift from the generic BUD box to their own branded die-cast box kind of marks MXR growing up fast in the mid-70s.
So, script logo. Early. Cool. Collectible. Script logo in a BUD box.
Okay.
That's like unicorn territory. Represents the absolute earliest, maybe most uncertain phase.
Pretty much, yeah. Incredibly rare. But the other defining thing about all these vintage models, script or block logo later on, is the complete lack of modern stuff.
Like we said, battery only.
Strictly battery only. You had to pop open the back, stick a 9-volt in there, maybe tape it down, no plug for a power supply.
And no light.
And no LED indicator. Nothing to tell you if the pedal was actually on or off.
You just had to stomp on it and listen for the chaos to know it was working. That's commitment.
Absolutely. And that wasn't unique just to the Blue Box back then, but it really highlights the whole vintage experience.
So the Blue Box was made throughout MXR's original run, right? Up until they shut down in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, up until MXR's original operations stopped around 84 or so. But our sources consistently point out that this pedal is way rarer than its famous siblings, like the Distortion Plus or the Phase 90.
Okay, why though? If it's one of the core four, why didn't they sell as many? Why is it harder to find now?
It really just boils down to sales numbers, most likely, because it was so unpredictable, so noisy. Its appeal was pretty niche, right?
Yeah, it wasn't your standard overdrive or phaser.
Exactly. So it probably sold in way smaller quantities compared to the Phase 90, for instance. Fewer made back then means fewer survive today. That's a big part of why it's considered this rare beast, especially those early script logo ones if they're still working properly.
And then MXR itself kind of went quiet for a bit.
Yeah, there was that dormant period. Original MXR stopped making pedals around 1984, no new blue boxes for a few years, until Jim Dunlop bought the brand name in 1987.
Ah, the Dunlop era. That's what set the stage for the modern revival.
Right. And looking at the big picture, that Dunlop acquisition was huge for keeping these classic designs alive and getting them back out there for new players. The Blue Box got reissued, now it's listed as the M103. Kind of brought it kicking and screaming into the modern age.
And modernizing the beast, as our notes say, meant adding those things people just expect now. The convenience is missing from the originals.
Precisely. The big differences in the reissue are pretty standard modern features. You get a bright red LED indicator.
So you actually know when the mayhem is about to start.
Right. And crucially, support for standard 9-volt DC power supplies. So you can actually stick it on your pedal board and power it easily without cracking the case open every time the battery dies.
Okay, but here's the big question, right? Whenever you reissue a vintage analog circuit, especially one like this, where its whole value comes from its glitches and imperfections, can you really replicate that chaos accurately? The fidelity question.
And that's the million-dollar question for collectors and players. MXR's goal with the reissue absolutely is to keep that vintage circuit character intact. But component changes over decades are just unavoidable.
How so?
Well, the specific types of capacitors, resistors, transistors available today, they just aren't made with the exact same materials or to the same, sometimes looser tolerances as they were back in the mid-70s. Modern components are generally more consistent, maybe cleaner.
And those tiny differences in components could actually matter a lot here, couldn't they? Because we're talking about a circuit that basically thrives on misbehaving. If a modern part is slightly tighter or cleaner, doesn't that risk ironing out some of that desirable unpredictability?
It absolutely can. And that's really the core of the whole debate you hear online. MXR even went so far as to make a specific script logo reissue version trying to capture the look and supposedly the behavior of those earliest units.
Right, trying to get closer.
But you still hear anecdotal reports from users who compare them side by side. People saying the modern ones maybe have less wild tracking, or the glitches sound a bit tighter, maybe less random. It's not necessarily a knock on the reissue's design quality. It's just the inherent difficulty of perfectly recreating a decades-old, intentionally noisy, glitchy circuit using modern, often better-performing components.
No, so you're essentially fighting against modern manufacturing quality to achieve a specific vintage malfunction.
It's fascinating.
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah.
Which is a great segue into where this pedal actually gets used out in the wild. This thing is definitely not for everyone, is it?
Oh, absolutely not.
Like if you're playing smooth jazz or country, probably not your first choice.
Probably not.
Yep.
But it's found this huge following with guitarists who are deliberately pushing boundaries. Think noise rock, experimental music, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, where chaos is a good thing.
Exactly. And yet, despite how wild it is, it actually has some serious A-list cred in pretty mainstream places.
Oh, yeah. Like who?
Well, the most famous example everyone cites is Jimmy Page. The guitar solo in Led Zeppelin's Fool in the Rain. That sound is widely credited to a Blue Box. No way. Fool in the Rain. Right. That's amazing. That's like taking this broken, farty analog synth box and sneaking it right into the middle of a super polished, almost perfect pop song.
Right. He clearly understood how to harness that chaos. He saw that the glitchy tracking and that huge sub-octave weight could be used as this really powerful texture, not just, a novelty effect.
That's genius use of limitation right there, taking the flaw and making it a feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then you contrast that with the story about Roland S. Howard.
From The Birthday Party.
Yeah, a total master of unconventional guitar sounds. The story goes, he lost his original vintage Blue Box somehow.
Oh, no.
And our sources mention that later on he got a reissue, tried to use it, and was apparently really dissatisfied with the sound. It just wasn't the same for him.
Wow. That one story really speaks volumes about that whole fidelity question we were just talking about, doesn't it?
It really does.
For a player like him, whose entire sonic identity might be built around the exact way his specific vintage pedal glitched and misbehaved, even a tiny change in how the reissue tracks could make it totally wrong for what he needed.
It just reinforces that idea, For a pedal that's defined by its quirks, the specific, maybe even unique behavior of a particular vintage unit can feel utterly irreplaceable to someone.
Yeah.
That aggressive tracking, the way it falls apart, plus that stark simplicity, no tone control at all, it definitely limits how you might use it in a normal rig. But that's what guarantees its unique, powerful voice.
It truly is a pedal where the challenges are the features. If you're willing to adapt your playing, maybe play cleaner, simpler lines, embrace the unpredictability, you get this just massive, fuzzed-out, sub-octave synth sound that adds instant weight.
Definitely. And hey, for anyone actually hunting for the vintage ones, remember the physical stuff too?
Oh, right, the insides.
Yeah, our sources mention this. Like a lot of early MXR pedals, those original script logo ones often had this foam padding inside, maybe to hold the battery snug or dampen vibrations, who knows.
Yeah.
But 50 years later, that foam just degrades into this horrible, sticky, gooey mess. Collectors often find these really messy interiors they have to carefully clean up.
Ugh, the joys of vintage gear.
It's a small detail, but it speaks to the real-world challenges of preserving these old, kind of primitive pieces of tech.
So, okay, we've gone through the whole life story, the crazy circuit, the vintage details, the modern comeback, how people actually use this beast.
Right.
What's the big takeaway here?
I think the takeaway is that the MXR Blue Box is it's a definitive piece of effects history, an analog to fuzz that's famous because of its flaws, not despite them.
Right.
It really demands a certain kind of playing style, like you said, controlled, simple lines mostly, and you got to be willing to embrace the glitch, the noise. That's what cemented its status as this super desirable, even if it's niche vintage icon. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. But for the right player, it's absolutely essential.
Totally agree. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we wanted to leave you, the listener, with maybe a little something to think about. We've talked about all these different versions, right? Script logo versus the later block logo.
The super rare BUD box enclosures.
The internal PCB differences that definitely happened over that original production run, even if they weren't always documented.
Yeah.
Authenticating these really early, really rare effects boxes is actually incredibly difficult because of all these little variations. So the question is, How do you, as a collector or just an enthusiast, truly verify? How do you guarantee that the sound of the vintage box you finally tracked down and paid top dollar for is the authentic, original chaos? Especially when the very first units probably had subtle differences between them anyway.
It's a really tricky question, isn't it? What does original sound even mean for something inherently unstable?
Exactly. It throws up a fascinating challenge about authenticity in the whole world of vintage analog gear. Something to mull over.